with Lisa Cook. This is very interesting because just because this federal housing guy, Bill Pulte, refers it, makes a referral to the DOJ does not mean the DOJ is actually going to run with it or actually pursue an indictment with a grand jury. But our information is that's exactly what's happening. She allegedly committed fraud, she denies it, in 3 different jurisdictions. One was Ann Arbor, Michigan, one was Atlanta, Georgia, and the third was Cambridge.
Megyn Kelly sharpens her words like blades, and Lisa Cook finds herself directly in the crosshairs. This isn't a polite disagreement or a passing critique. This is a calculated takedown, one that strips away the lofty titles and polished resumes to expose what lurks beneath. The veneer of credibility, the carefully curated image of expertise, and the unearned reputation of authority are shredded. Kelly's firepower turns Cook from a celebrated figure into a glaring symbol of what happens when mediocrity is mistaken for mastery.
The story right now is Lisa Cook. I'm very into this woman because it's very clear to me she DEI'd her way up to this seat.
How dare you?
How dare you?
That's terrible.
And now she's been caught. It's just like, honestly, I'm just going to say it. There have been a lot of Black women who have ascended to these positions on very thin credentials, and then some sort of scandal takes them down, and the left freaks out about the fact that you're going after a...
Kelly starts by dissecting the myth of competence that surrounds Lisa Cook. Appointed to one of the most consequential positions in economic oversight, Cook is painted as an expert whose insights are meant to guide financial stability. But Kelly points out the inconvenient truth. Cook's record is thin, her publications sparse, and her influence in the academic world negligible compared to the giants of the field. It isn't brilliance that landed her the chair, it's politics. Kelly highlights the disconnect between the resume and the pedestal, showing how image has eclipsed substance.
The instances. So the FBI is investigating her. We are told that the possible charges that they're looking at include mortgage fraud, wire fraud, and it could go beyond that, Glenn. She is now trying to make the case through her lawyer, Abby Lowell, that she is not fireable for these alleged offenses because now she's claiming she disclosed these shenanigans to senators and Biden administration officials in 2022 when she went through the conference.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. From there, Kelly zeroes in on the corrosive culture of box checking that propelled Cook upward. This isn't meritocracy, it's optics masquerading as achievement. In a world that values appearances over results, Cook became the poster child for representation over qualification. Kelly doesn't hold back in mocking the celebration of mediocrity disguised as diversity, noting that the true insult isn't to critics, but to those who actually put in the decades of groundbreaking work that Cook never delivered. The chair she sits in demands sharpness, but Kelly paints her as blunt, untested, and out of her depth.
Not only does this woman, has she allegedly committed at least 3 alleged instances of mortgage fraud with respect to a property in Michigan, a property in Atlanta, and now there's a third property where she allegedly misstated the purpose of her home. And this one was in, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. It's the third location. My team will get it to me. And in all 3 instances, she has stated
the roast grows sharper as Kelly contrasts Cook with economists who actually shaped policy and theory. While towering names redefined markets and drove innovation, Cook's academic trail reads like a whisper in a thunderstorm. Kelly dismantles the notion that Cook has influenced major debates in economics, mocking the exaggerated claims of impact that appear in puff pieces. When measured against genuine intellectual heavyweights, Cook fades into irrelevance. Kelly frames it as the professional equivalent of putting a high school essay on the same shelf as Nobel Prize-winning research.
Has been in the news. She's this member of the board of governors that's at the Fed that oversees like the Federal Reserve. And Bill Pulte of the Fair Housing Administration has found a bunch of examples, he says, of her committing what he calls mortgage fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, all sorts of criminal fraud, because she applied for houses by saying that they were going to be her primary residences when he says they weren't. Applied for one house saying it would be her secondary residence when in fact it was going to be a rental.
Kelly doesn't stop at the resume. She dismantles the performance. In testimony and public speaking, Cook's delivery is hesitant, unconvincing, and often drowned in cliches. Kelly roasts the lack of command that should be second nature to anyone holding a national platform. Instead of clarity, there's vagueness. Instead of authority, there's fumbling. The imagery Kelly crafts is brutal. a supposed expert who sounds less like a guiding voice of economic stability and more like a substitute lecturer stumbling through slides she didn't prepare. The gap between the title and the execution is glaring.
Claim where her primary residence is at the same time, which is not possible. And it wasn't possible in her case. And she's not even denying it. Cambridge, Massachusetts was the third one. She's not even denying it, Ben. She hasn't, like, everyone's coming out saying she has the presumption of innocence. Well, she's not saying she's innocent. Not once has she said, I didn't commit this mortgage fraud. At most, her lawyers have said, well, one was a mistake.
Well, my favorite is, well, she hasn't hurt anybody because she's paying back the mortgages, which is, of course, exactly what one Donald J. Trump said in his New York fraud trial.
Moving into Cook's appointment itself, Kelly paints it as a masterclass in political theater. The push to elevate her wasn't about advancing rigorous thought or groundbreaking ideas, but about optics in a moment where symbolic gestures overshadowed genuine excellence. Kelly skewers the way Cook became a headline victory for activists, not a victory for economic stewardship. The roast bites hardest when Kelly points out the damage this does to institutions. When credentials are treated like accessories instead of hard-won proof of skill, credibility collapses. Cook becomes a cautionary tale for what happens when politics hijacks professionalism. Kelly digs into the narratives spun around Cook's so-called trailblazing role. Supporters label her historic, revolutionary, a barrier breaker. Kelly dismantles these titles with surgical precision. History is made by those who change the course of events, not by those who merely occupy a chair for the first time. The applause for being first rings hollow if the work doesn't leave a mark. Kelly compares it to celebrating someone for being the first to show up to a race without running a single lap. Symbolism without substance isn't progress. It's parody.
I predict yes.
Am I the only one who, when I fill out these forms, am actually very careful and afraid of making a mistake? Like, I've had people on here say, like, well, a lot of people, I'm like, they do? I'm terrified when I fill out documents. That's probably because we're lawyers. So we're like, oh, God, we're always worried we're going to get thrown in jail because we spend our life in the legal system. But I think this is nuts. Like, this is not something everybody does. Most people are super careful to say what's real on these things, especially when you're applying for money in the form of a mortgage date.
Turning to Cook's public record, Kelly roasts the absence of transformative contributions. When other economists shaped global debates on trade, finance, and monetary policy, Cook's work barely echoes beyond niche circles. Kelly skewers the pretense of expertise, mocking the way institutions inflate her profile to match the demands of the moment. She argues that Cook's name isn't synonymous with ideas. It's synonymous with appointments. The fire in Kelly's critique is unmissable. When the resume is shallow, the pedestal crumbles under its own weight. Kelly sharpens her roast by targeting the culture that shields Cook from criticism. Detractors aren't engaged with debate. They're dismissed as attackers. Every challenge is spun as bias, every question reframed as hostility. Kelly tears into this victimhood shield, pointing out that it prevents accountability. If every critic can be brushed aside as malicious, then Cook never has to answer for her glaring gaps. Kelly skewers the absurdity of insulating leaders from scrutiny when the very point of leadership is to withstand it. Institutions crumble not from attack, but from cowardice in facing it.
Is she one of the most accomplished, respected econ experts in the nation?
I mean, I'd never heard of her. Had you heard of her?
Literally nobody has ever heard of her other than Chris Rufo, who, unlike the two of us, is always paying attention to these details. And he was
You don't want to
there.
get on Chris's radar.
You
That's
do
just
not.
a bad move. Wow.
No. If he went to look at my academic papers, he would.
Kelly dives into Cook's broader implications for the credibility of the Federal Reserve. The Fed is supposed to be the epitome of rigor, a fortress of economic expertise guiding the country's stability. By planting Cook in that fortress, Kelly argues credibility is traded for theater. Every hesitant statement, every vague remark, every stumble chips away at the trust needed for markets to believe in the Fed's authority. Kelly paints the institution as an orchestra, with Cook as the violinist playing off-key, souring the entire performance. From there, Kelly transitions to the hypocrisy of Cook's defenders. These are the same voices who insist on excellence in every other sphere, yet suddenly embrace mediocrity when it suits their politics. Kelly ridicules the cognitive dissonance of applauding someone for qualities that, in any other field, would be disqualifying. The irony isn't just sharp, it's damning. Kelly makes it clear that propping up the unqualified undercuts the very values her defenders claim to champion. Excellence doesn't bend to politics, politics bends to excellence. Cook proves the inversion is disastrous.
Here's the other thing. If she's really going to go with, this was all disclosed and handled as an effort to keep her job. Again, as I said, she's got much bigger problems now than keeping her job. She'd like to keep her freedom. But I mean, if she's going to look at potentially multiple counts of wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and something else, she really could be headed to jail. By the way, now we just broke the news, so people are here. We broke that news on the Megyn Kelly show about the grand jury. Now the Wall Street Journal also reporting what we are reporting and saying that the DOJ is issuing subpoenas in connection with this inquiry in both Georgia, as we reported, the grand jury is proceeding in Atlanta.
Kelly's roast grows more biting as she explores the ripple effect of Cook's elevation. For younger economists, the message isn't to push boundaries or produce meaningful research, it's to master optics. Kelly skewers the corrosive lesson being taught, that visibility matters more than substance, that affiliations outweigh ideas. Cook becomes a symbol not of achievement, but of shortcuts. For an institution tasked with guiding the economy, this is more than embarrassing. It's dangerous. Kelly leaves no room for doubt. Credibility, once squandered, is nearly impossible to restore. The critique deepens when Kelly addresses Cook's public image. She's packaged as authoritative, yet the substance doesn't match the branding. Kelly paints the image of glossy magazine features and photo ops propping up a hollow core. It's a Potemkin village of credibility, impressive from a distance, but flimsy up close. The roast lands hard. Institutions can't run on press releases, and credibility can't be manufactured by spin. Cook's reputation is an empty vessel, filled with applause but drained of achievement.
But her name is Lisa Cook. And I want you to know she's the first and only black woman to hold that position. This is a very big deal because she's the first and only black woman to ever hold that position. And did I mention she's black and a woman? And she's the only one to, yeah. So that, and what that means, if you read the press, is don't fucking touch her. That's what that means. Read the New York Times. You touch her, including if she committed a crime, you're racist. You also are racist, just like Trump trying to get rid of the murdering in D.C. That's racist, and prosecuting crime against black defendants is racist. It's all racist if it involves Democrats.
Kelly pushes harder by examining the fallout of having such a figure in a role of consequence. Confidence in markets rests on belief that leaders know what they're doing. When that belief is punctured, chaos follows. Kelly doesn't just mock Cook for incompetence, she warns of the real-world cost. A misstep in policy isn't just embarrassing, it can send ripples through every household in America. Kelly underscores the absurdity of entrusting such power to someone whose record inspires doubt rather than confidence. From here, Kelly pivots to the hypocrisy of Cook's supposed defenders in academia. The very institutions that once dismissed mediocrity now rally behind it when convenient. Kelly exposes the intellectual rot that results when standards collapse under pressure. Cook's rise isn't a testament to her brilliance, it's a mirror reflecting the decline of rigor in spaces once dedicated to it. The roast burns hot as Kelly points out that academia, which should be a crucible for excellence, is instead producing spectacles like Cook's ascension. Kelly wraps this segment by exposing the long-term cost to public trust. Every time politics trumps merit, the public's faith in institutions erodes. Cook becomes more than an individual misstep. She becomes a metaphor for decline. The Fed, once untouchable in its authority, now carries the stain of politics in its highest appointments. Kelly's final thrust is merciless. If leaders like Cook remain unchallenged, the damage won't just be personal, it'll be institutional, leaving cracks that will take decades to repair.
Like how pathetic the attempted defense is in the way this is being covered. The Abby Lowell motion to try to get all of this against her, like in support of, he wants the firing to be overturned. He argues as follows. During her Senate confirmation process, Governor Cook submitted questionnaires and provided reports that would have revealed the same purported facial contradictions the government now claims are cause to fire her.
Kelly sharpens the attack by zeroing in on Cook's inability to inspire confidence beyond her curated circle. Outside the halls of academia and politics, the public sees someone elevated far above her actual contributions. Kelly paints the picture of ordinary Americans watching hearings, listening for clarity, and hearing instead jargon stitched together without conviction. It's not just uninspiring, it's alarming when the stakes involve national markets. Confidence doesn't survive on buzzwords, it demands substance, and Kelly underscores how little of that Cook has demonstrated. From there, Kelly widens the lens, dissecting the cultural obsession with symbolism over effectiveness. Cook is packaged as proof of progress, yet the real progress, measurable impact, pioneering research, transformative leadership is glaringly absent. Kelly argues that when institutions rely on packaging instead of performance, they plant seeds of cynicism that eventually grow into distrust. The problem isn't that Cook is celebrated for representation, it's that representation is being confused with results. Kelly's roast lands hard because it challenges the illusion of progress without achievement. Kelly then attacks the narrative of inevitability that insulated Cook during her confirmation. Critics were waved away, scrutiny was discouraged, and dissenters were branded as hostile. Kelly ridicules the way debate was silenced, as if questioning credentials were itself an act of bigotry. By stifling discourse, institutions created an echo chamber where Cook was never truly tested. Kelly skewers this process as cowardice masquerading as compassion.
In her home loan paperwork, while she was being vetted by the Biden administration ahead of her confirmation in 2022, Abby Lowell confirmed that Cook stated on a background check form submitted as part of her vetting, 1, that the Michigan house, the one in Ann Arbor, was her primary residence and her Georgia condo was her second home. 2, on another document, she listed both abodes, as well as her Massachusetts condo, as her present residence, while specifying the Michigan home was her current permanent residence, and the Cambridge condo was both a second home and a rental property. That's the evidence that she allegedly disclosed this to
leaders worthy of their titles withstand scrutiny. They don't hide behind shields crafted by public relations teams. The roast grows hotter as Kelly dismantles Cook's attempts to frame herself as a visionary. The reality, Kelly argues, is that vision requires boldness, new frameworks, and the courage to challenge orthodoxy. Cook offers none of these. Instead, she recycles platitudes, presenting caution as innovation. Kelly mocks the pretense of originality when nothing Cook advances moves beyond the most basic conventional wisdom. Visionaries chart new waters. Cook merely floats in the current, waving as if she's leading. Kelly closes this extension with a blistering warning, driving home the long-term costs of hollow leadership. Institutions that abandon rigor for image don't merely lose credibility. They corrode from within, piece by piece, until nothing substantial remains. Cook may be the most visible example of this unraveling, but she is hardly the only one. Her appointment becomes a signal flare, proof that politics has overtaken performance and that showmanship outweighs substance in the hierarchy of priorities. Kelly points out that when positions of influence are handed out as symbolic victories rather than earned triumphs, the very foundation of trust begins to crack. Once trust is lost, it cannot be repaired with slogans or speeches. Cook, in this framing, is not just an individual misstep, but a warning sign of systemic decay. Every echo of her rise tells future generations that credentials are ornamental, not earned. Kelly stresses that the rot spreads quickly. One compromised choice leads to another, and soon the institution itself resembles a shell propped up by pretense. If leaders like Cook remain unchallenged, the system doesn't just falter, it empties itself of value, leaving only a facade where strength and substance used to stand.